evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to MSR Legal Oroma, the YouTube channel dedicated to special needs parenting in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, specifically with an eye to monitoring any and all educational policy developments that would impact special education rights and the rights of children with disabilities. So I am an education attorney. I have been practicing in this field specifically since 2008, and I've worked on all sides of special education law for parents, of course, which is what I do now, school districts, including the New York City Department of Education and Long Island school boards. And most recently, before opening up my own practice, I worked for special needs private schools, which targeted students with autism spectrum disorder. So I like to think of myself as being definitely well-rounded in this field, and I do bring a unique perspective, I think, to this practice of law. And my firm, MSR Legal and Consulting Services, is named after my three daughters, their initials, and it was founded on the premise that all children are individuals, and even those with the same diagnoses, the symptoms present themselves very differently, and so I believe strongly that education should be customized and individualized to fit the specific needs of the child. That said, I want to highlight my latest blog post. So I am trying to continue blogging regularly, even as we come out of the pandemic, just to keep families up to date on, what's happening in the current events in this area, and how do you make sure that your child receives an appropriate education going forward and is compensated for any learning loss that occurred as a result of the pandemic. So the blog I started in March 2020, at exactly the time that the world was shutting down due to the pandemic, and I started blogging about a variety of topics of interest to parents of children with special needs, of course, with an eye towards education and special education rights. And I actually blogged for each day of the pandemic shutdown between March and the end of June, and I've continued to blog periodically ever since, because there are developments and policy changes that I think are important to families to know about and to actually figure out how it impacts them and their child. So this blog post that I'm going to highlight today is about a concept in the law called pendency. So my website is www.msrlegal.org, and it should be up on your screen. If you toggle to this link for the blog, Special Needs Parenting and the Coronavirus, you will see today's blog, which is about pendency. What can pendency do for you? So if you are a parent of a child who has an IEP, an individualized education plan, individualized education program, an IEP, that does create, obviously, many rights. But for the purposes of this blog, I highlight the right to pendency. So for families who are whose child's in the midst of a transition, whether it's from pre-kindergarten to kindergarten, or from high school to post-secondary school, or perhaps there are recommendations for the child to move into a different setting, whether it's more restrictive or less restrictive, families should know that their child has pendency rights to stay in the current placement or in the last agreed upon placement, between the district and the parent, or the placement that has most recently been ordered and approved by an impartial hearing officer or a judicial administrative hearing officer. Your child, if you are in the midst of challenging the new recommendation for your child, whether it's a different kind of classroom or a different size that your district is recommending for your child for the upcoming school year, you do have the right, obviously, to challenge it, and that's a large part of what I do as a special education attorney is guide parents and represent them in challenging those changes that the parent feels strongly are inappropriate. But those changes do not have to be implemented right away, and that's the wonderful thing about this concept of pendency, is that your child has the right to stay put, so to speak, to stay put during the pendency of any due process proceedings where the parent is challenging the offer of a free appropriate education. So, I was fortunate enough to do 2 cases of this nature, actually in federal court, which allowed a child to continue to receive preschool special education services beyond the typical age eligibility. It also allowed a child to continue receiving services in person in the midst of the pandemic shutdown and hybrid learning. So it's a powerful tool. It's one that I obviously believe strongly in utilizing when it is warranted, and it's just something for families to keep in mind as we continue to navigate this post-COVID era, and thinking about how to make sure that our children's rights are protected, and that they're getting the appropriate education going forward, and also are getting compensatory services when warranted. So thanks for tuning in. Please check back again next Friday. I am committed to at least trying to do these short episodes of MSR Legal Oroma on YouTube every Friday evening, hopefully between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And families, if you do have questions, feel free to book a virtual consultation on my website. You can toggle to this button, which is something that's like a purple color, and from there you can book a consultation if you're interested in knowing what your rights are and, of course, what your options are. All right, until next time, take care.